Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live.
um, which I believe it does. Hello, YouTube. How is everyone doing today? Get some pictures up. How is everyone doing today? And welcome to the Alchemist. Welcome to the Alchemist. We got very, very far yesterday, but I do feel like I want to go over it. We got through 17 pages yesterday, so that was really good. I'm so proud of Melissa because we did an amazing job. But I am going to go back and go over some points in the first hour. And then we'll start on page 117 in the second hour. So if Melissa comes on board, then we'll stop for a little bit to have a conversation about how her week was. And before I get started, I'd love to know how everyone's week was, themselves. I pray that weekends are reset moments or your days off are resets, right? We talked about going to bed at night and allowing sleep to reset and restore. And that it's important to tell your body, I am going to sleep to restore my body, to reset my body. Hold on, just let me text Melissa. Hold on, guys. Oh my goodness. Um, so, um, so using the words restore, reset, and saying that to yourself, you're gonna find it to be beneficial. It's gonna be interesting for you all to discover that talking to yourself is very, very important. Learn to talk to yourself. You might seem a little wackadoo. This is true. Um, but it does help, right? Because when you say something out loud, you better validate what it is that you're trying to do. Okay? So you don't necessarily have to say it out loud, right? That's what I do. I'm a little cuckoo crazy. But if I like sometimes when I go walking, sometimes I want to talk out loud when I'm walking because there's nobody around. But I will keep an earpiece in my ear so that people think I'm talking on the phone. Sometimes I just want to talk to the animals. Sometimes spirit will come in my head and I'll be like, well, I don't know if I should do that, spirit, but I might say it out loud. This way, I keep an earpiece in my ear. People think I'm talking um, to someone. But sometimes when you go walking is a restorative act, by the way. Like, you don't have to consider walking as a form of exercise. It could be a way of restoring cells that haven't moved well inside of your body, right? Um, It's too late for some of you all, but swimming also is a restorative act. Sleep, we talked about, is a restorative act, and that you have to do nightly. So to go to bed and say to your body, I'm sleeping for you to restore yourself, body. And I honor the restoration. See how that get work? It even feels good. And right now I want to go back to sleep because that felt so good. And I'm like, oh child, maybe I should just quit this program and go back to sleep because I believe in the process of talking to myself and encouraging myself, right? If I don't, who will? I mean, a lot of people do. Who am I kidding? A lot of people do, but not everybody has a lot of people. I happen to have a public platform, which makes it easier to be encouraged, right? Good morning, Ayana. Good morning, Miss Net, and good health to you both. So I'm going to go over the pages that we went through last week, and I'm pretty much going to start at. I'm going to try and find a part with the old lady, right? It was a seer or a psychic, she was. And the boy had just had a dream. Let me see if I can find it. I don't know why I saved it from 100. No, it couldn't have been from 100. Oh, yeah, something to do with the horse. Okay, so I'm going to start at page 100. And I'm going to start with I'm a desert woman. Now I'm going to start at the desert takes our men from us. So, oh, I need water. Oh, I need coffee. The desert takes our men from us, and they don't always return, she said. We know that, and we are used to it. Those who don't return become a part of the clouds, a part of the animals that hide in the ravines, and of the water that comes from the earth. They become a part of everything. They become the soul of the world. Some do come back, and then the other women are happy because they believe that their men may one day return. I used to look at those women and envy them and their happiness. Now I too will be one of the women who wait. I'm a desert woman and I'm proud of that. I want my husband to wander as free as the wind that shapes the dunes. And if I have to, I will accept the fact that he has become part of the clouds, the animals, the water of the desert. The boy went to look for the Englishman. He wanted to tell him about Fatima. He was surprised when he saw that the Englishman had built himself a furnace outside his tent. It was a strange furnace fueled by firewood with a transparent flask heating on top. The Englishman stared out to the desert. His eyes seemed brighter than they had when he was reading books. This is the first phase of the job, he said. I have to separate out the sulfur. To do that successfully, I must have no fear of failure. It was my fear of failure that first kept me from attempting the master work. Now I'm beginning what I could have started 10 years ago. But I'm happy at least that I didn't wait 20 years. He continued to feed the fire, and the boy stayed until the desert turned pink in the setting sun. He felt the urge to go into the desert to see if its silence held the answers to his questions. He wandered for a while, keeping the date palms of the oasis within sight. He listened to the wind. He felt the stones beneath his feet. Here and there, he found a shell and realized the desert in remote times had been a sea. He sat on a stone, allowed himself to become hypnotized by the horizon. He tried to deal with the concept of love as distinct from possession, and he couldn't separate them. But Fatima was a woman of the desert. If anything could help him to understand, it was the desert. As he sat there thinking, he sensed movement above him. Looking up, he saw a pair of hawks flying in the sky. He watched the hawks as they drifted in the wind. Although their flight appeared to have no pattern, it made a certain kind of sense to the boy. It was just that he couldn't grasp what it meant. He followed the movement of the birds, trying to read something in it. Maybe these desert birds could explain to him the meaning of love without ownership. He felt sleepy. In his heart, he wanted to remain awake, but he also wanted to sleep. I'm learning the language of the world, and everything in the world is beginning to make sense to me. Even the flight of the hawks, he said to himself. And in that mood, he was grateful to be in love. When you are in love, things make even more sense, he thought. Suddenly, one of the hawks made a flashing dive through the sky, attacking the other. And it did so. As it did so, a sudden fleeting image came to the boy. An army with its swords at the ready, riding in the oasis. The vision vanished immediately, but it had shaken him. He had heard of people speak of mirages and had already seen himself. There were desires that, because of their intensity, materialized over the sands of the desert. But he certainly didn't desire that an army would invade the oasis. He wanted to forget the vision and return to his meditation. He tried again to concentrate on the pink shades of the deserts and the stones, but there was something in his heart that wouldn't allow him to do so. Always heed the omens, the king said. The boy recalled what he had seen in a vision and sensed that it was actually going to occur. He rose and made his way back toward the palm trees. Once again, he perceived the many languages and the things about him. This time, the desert was safe, and it was the oasis that had become dangerous. The camel driver was seated at the base of the palm tree, observing the sunset. He saw the boy appear from the other side of the dunes. An army is coming, the boy said. I had a vision. The desert fills men's hearts with visions, the camel driver answered. But the boy told him about the hawks, that he had been watching their flight and suddenly felt himself to have plunged to the soul of the world. The camel driver understood what the boy was saying. He knew that any given thing on the face of the earth could reveal the history of all things. One could open a book to any page, or look at a person's hand, or one could turn a card, or watch the flight of birds. Whatever this thing observed, one can find a connection with his experience of the moment. Actually, it wasn't that those things in themselves revealed anything at all. It was just that people, looking at what was occurring around them, could find a means of penetration to the soul of the world. Now, although this was a bad omen that the boy got by looking at the birds, I was telling Melissa that you can always tell when a storm passes because the birds will come back out. Even if the sky is gray, even if it's still raining, you will hear the birds chirping because they get the sign that the storm has passed that particular area. And I observed that years ago. There was a terrible storm in Staten Island, New York. Nothing like they went through years later, but it was still so bad. and the sky was gray, and the rain was still there, and yet the birds were chirping on the power line. And I remember looking at them, and I remember saying, having a conversation with the animals, I remember saying, "It's over." And that was the first time I realized what the boy calls the soul of the world, that birds will talk to you. We just had Hurricane Fiona pass over St. Croix, and blessed be, we did not get hit. But before the hurricane hit, a dove laid in front of my window. That's an odd thing because they're called brown walking doves, and all they do is walk. You don't ever really see them sitting on the ground. It's rare. And here this dove was sitting on the grass just as the storm was coming. So I looked at the dove and I said, "It's going to be okay." And the dove didn't answer, right? I had to interpret the soul of the world by the dove sitting there. The other thing that was very odd about the dove, because they walk a lot, brown doves tend to be very thin because they walk a lot. And this one had his chest puffed up. And I thought, is this your way of preparing for the hurricane? Is the puffy chest something that's automatic with you? Didn't get any answers, don't get me wrong. I'm just looking, like, puffiness means to be filled up, right? To be satisfied, right? That's the way I interpreted it, right? Um, and sure enough, whether I understood the message in the moment, but understood it better in hindsight, the bird that showed up before the hurricane hit was trying to say something. You're going to be okay. You'll be fine. I did screw myself up because I was trying to make sure if my lights went out that I had food to eat. So I ate, pork for 3 days, and I ate ham, I ate bacon, I ate ham, and I am off of meat for a very long time because I caught allergic reactions. Although I was fine one way, I tried to kill myself another way. It's funny. Getting back. Um, Actually, it wasn't that those things in themselves revealed anything at all. It was just that people looking at what was occurring around them could find a means of penetration to the soul of the world. Hold on a second. Okay, good. Um, the desert was full of men who earned their living based on the ease with which they could penetrate to the soul of the world. They were known as seers, and they were held in fear by women and the elderly. Tribesmen were always wary of consulting them because it would be impossible to be effective in battle if one knew that he was fated to die. The tribesmen preferred the taste of battle and the thrill of not knowing what the outcome would be. The future was already written by Allah, and what he had written was always for the good of men. So the tribesmen lived only for the present because the present was full of surprises, and they had to be aware of many things. Where's the enemy's sword? Where was his horse? What kind of blow should one deliver next in order to remain alive? The camel driver was not a fighter, and he had consulted with seers. Many of them have been right about what they said, while some have been wrong. Then, one day, the oldest seer he had ever sought out, and the one most to be feared, had asked why the camel driver was so interested in the future. Well, so I can do things, he responded. And so I can change those things that I don't want to happen. But then they wouldn't be a part of your future, the seer had said. Well, maybe I just want to know the future so I can prepare myself for what's coming. If good things are coming, they will be a pleasant surprise, said the seer. If bad things are coming, and you know in advance, you will suffer greatly before they even occur. I want to know about the future because I'm a man, the camel driver had said to the seer. And men always live their lives based on the future. The seer was a specialist in the casting of twigs. He threw them to the ground and made interpretations based on how they fell. That day, he didn't make a cast. He wrapped the twigs in a piece of cloth and put them back in his bag. I make my living forecasting the future for people, he said. I know the science of the twigs, and I know how to use them to penetrate to the place where all is written. There, I can read the past, discover what has already been forgotten, and understand the omens that are here in the present. When people consult me, it's not that I'm reading the future, I am guessing at the future. The future belongs to God, and it's only He who reveals it under extraordinary circumstances. How do I guess at the future? Based on the omens of the present. The secret is here in the present. If you pay attention to the present, you can improve upon it. And if you improve on the present, what comes later will also be better. Forget about the future and live each day according to the teachings, confident that God loves his children. Each day in itself brings with it an eternity. The camel driver had asked what the circumstances were under which God will allow him to see the future. Only when he himself reveals it, and God only rarely reveals the future. When he does, it is for only one reason. It's a future that was written so as to be altered. God had shown the boy a part of the future, the camel driver thought. Why was it that he wanted the boy to serve as an instrument? Go and speak to the tribal chieftain, said the camel driver. Tell them about the armies that are approaching. They'll laugh at me. They are men of the desert. Men of the desert are used to dealing with omens. Well, then they probably already know. They're not concerned with that right now. They believe they have to know about something Allah wants them to know. Someone will tell them about it. It's happened many times before, but this time, the person is you. The boy thought of Fatima, and he decided he would go see the chiefs of the tribes. The boy approached the guard at the front of the huge white tent at the center of the oasis. I want to see the chieftains. I brought omens from the desert. Without responding, the guard entered the tent where he remained for some time. When he emerged, it was with a young Arab dressed in white and gold. The boy told the younger man what he had seen, and the man asked him to wait there. He disappeared into the tent. Night fell, and the assortment of fighting men and merchants entered and exited the tent one by one. Campfires were extinguished, and the oasis fell as quiet as the desert. Only the lights in the great tent remained. During all this time, the boy thought about Fatima, and he was still unable to understand his last conversation with her. Finally, after hours of waiting, the guard bade the boy to enter. The boy was astonished by what he saw inside. Never could he imagine that there in the middle of the desert There existed a tent like this one. The ground was covered with the most beautiful carpets he had ever walked upon. And from the top of the structure, huge lamps had hand-wrought gold, each with a lighted candle. The Chaibo chieftains were seated at the back of the tent in a semicircle, resting upon richly embroidered silk cushions. Servants came and went with silver trays laden with spices and teas. Other servants maintained the fires and the hookahs. The atmosphere was suffused with the sweet scent of smoke. There were 8 chieftains, and the boy could see immediately which of them was the most important. An Arab, dressed in white and gold, seated at the center of the semicircle. At his side was the young Arab the boy had spoken with earlier. "Who is this stranger who speaks of omens?" asked one of the chieftains. "It is I," the boy answered, and he told him what he had seen. I'm missing a picture here. Oh, I know what it is. There you go. And he told him what he had seen. "Why would the desert reveal such things to a stranger when it knows that we have been here for generations?" said another chieftain. "Because my eyes are not yet accustomed to the desert," the boy said. "I can see things that eyes inhabited to the desert might not see." "The oasis is a neutral ground. No one attacks an oasis," said the third chieftain. "I can only tell you what I saw. If you don't want to believe me, you don't have to do anything about it." How brave was this little boy? How brave. I mean, even the words that he's using. "This is what I saw. I'm sticking to it. That's it. You do what you want with it." Wow. How many of us might have backed down if someone says, "No, that's not the way it is. That's not the way it is." And psychics have to go through this a lot. I went through this most recently with a client, and I was like, "There's trouble here." And she was like, "No, he's finishing out the trouble." And I was like, "Oh." And then I looked again and I was like, "No, sweetie, there's trouble here. He might be finishing out the trouble, but I think somebody might turn on him." And so sometimes, even as a psychic, like an all powerful psychic, when I'm dealing with circumstances that to somebody else might have been solved, right? "Nope, nope, Tracy, it's solved." And I'm like, "No, they wouldn't show me in the present moment. If something was there, they would show it to me as a past, not as a present." I said, "This is the present." So he might be finishing out what you call trouble, but he's actually walking into trouble. Tell him to be careful because he's about to make a deal and they're going to turn on him. So the Arabs are not like, they're like, "Who are you? We live in the desert. Like, who are you?" And I'm so proud of him that he was like, "It's my vision. I don't see the desert with the same eyes as you guys have. And because I don't have the same eyes, my eyes are sharper. So you can believe me or you don't have to. I've applied the message." The men fell in animated discussion. They spoke in an Arabic dialect the boy didn't understand, but when he made to leave, the guard told him to stay. The boy became fearful. The omens told him that something was wrong. He regretted having spoken to the camel driver about what he had seen in the desert. Suddenly, the elder at the center smiled, almost imperceptibly, and the boy felt better. The man hadn't participated in the discussion, and in fact, hadn't said a word up to that point. but the boy already used the language of the world, and he could feel the vibration of peace throughout the tent. It's very powerful. Now his intuition was that he had been right in coming. The discussion ended. The chieftains were silent for a few moments as they listened to what the old man was saying. And then he turned to the boy. This time his expression was cold and distant. 2,000 years ago, in a distant land, a man believed in dreams, was thrown into a dungeon, and then sold as a slave. The old man said, now in the dialect the boy understood. Our merchants brought the man and brought him to Egypt. All of us know that whoever believes in dreams also knows how to interpret them, the elder continued. When a pharaoh dreamed of the cows that were thin and cows that were fat, this man, I'm speaking of, rescued Egypt from famine. His name was Joseph. He too was a stranger in a strange land like you. And he was probably about your age. He paused, and his eyes were still unfriendly. We always observe the tradition. The tradition saves Egypt from famine in those days and made the Egyptians the wealthiest of the people. The tradition teaches men how to cross the desert and how their children should marry. The tradition says that an oasis is neutral territory because both sides have oases, and so both are vulnerable. No one said a word as the old man continued. But the tradition always says that we should believe the messages of the desert. Everything we know was taught to us by the desert. The old man gave a signal, and everyone stood. The meeting was over. The hookahs were extinguished, and the guard stood at attention. The boy made ready to leave, but the old man spoke again. Tomorrow, we are going to break the agreement that says no one at the oasis may carry arms. Throughout the entire day, we will be on the lookout for our enemies. When the sun sets, the men will once again surrender their arms to me. For every 10 dead men amongst our enemies, you will receive a piece of gold. But arms cannot be drawn unless they also go into battle. Arms are as capricious as the desert, and if they are not used, the next time they may not function. If at least one of them hasn't been used by the end of the day tomorrow, one will be used on you. When the boy left the tent, the oasis was illuminated only by the light of the full moon. He was 20 minutes from his tent, and he began to make his way there. He was alarmed by what had happened. He had succeeded in reaching through the soul of the world the message, and now the price for having done so might be his life. It was a frightening bet, but he had been making risky bets ever since the day he had sold his sheep to pursue his personal legend. And as the camel driver had said, to die tomorrow was no worse than dying on any other day. Every day was there to be lived to mark one's departure from this world. Everything depended on one word, Mukta. All right, that's page 112. We still got a few pages left. I'm reading, going over it last week. It was just so fascinating to me in the first hour. I am going to take a little break. I'm just going to get my coffee. So be patient with me, and I will be right back.
Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live.
All right, guys. So sorry. Oh, shoot. Let me get some water. A lot of drinking. All right, guys. I am back. Oh, man. I am back. I am back. All right. Put some powder on me. There you go. All right. Walking along in his silence, he had no regrets. If he died tomorrow, it would be because God was not willing to change the future. He would at least have died after having crossed the straits, after working in a crystal shop, after having known the silence of the desert and Fatima's eyes. He had lived every one of his days intensely since he had left home so long ago. If he died tomorrow, he would have already seen more than other shepherds, and he was proud of that. Off book, I tell a lot of my clients who are devastated when things don't go their way in the end, like let's say it's love, right? And people feel like, I'm in a relationship and I gave him so much, Tracy, and, in the end, I didn't get what I want, right? But you did get what you want, right? You found someone that you fell in love with. That's a beautiful feeling to have that experience, right? And I'm not saying, and I want to be very clear about something. I'm not saying you found someone that loved you. The objective in life is to find love, but the love is what you feel. I fell in love. That's what you're really asking God. I want to know what that feeling is like. And you got that. And it's okay if it doesn't survive, it's okay if it doesn't last. Remember what you received. That's the most important thing in life, is to really participate in knowing that you can appreciate something when you got it. We can appreciate a good meal when it shows up. We can appreciate our paychecks, right? But we have, and a good meal doesn't last, right? Your paycheck doesn't last, right? But you look forward to working at the next meal or the next paycheck. But nothing lasts. But to be able to operate in life and know that I was in love and I like that feeling. And I'm of gratitude that God let me find someone that could bring that out of me, not bring that out of someone else for me. If that's what you're waiting for, you're not living, because nothing is designed that way. And if it's not designed that way from the human perspective, then all you can do is find what feels good to you. Do what feels good. Hurt no one. Do what feels good. So when this boy said, He wasn't alarmed by what happened. He had succeeded in reaching the soul of the world. And now the price for having done so might be his life. It was frightening. But he had been making risky bets ever since the day he had sold his sheep to pursue his personal legend. And as the camel driver has said, to die tomorrow was no worse than dying on any other day. Every day was there to be lived or to mark one's departure from this world. Walking in silence, he had no regrets. If he died tomorrow, it would be because God was not willing to change the future. He would at least have died after crossing the straits, after having worked in a crystal shop, after having knowing the silence of the desert, after have looking into Fatima's eyes. He had lived every one of his days intensely since he had left home so long ago. If he died tomorrow, he would have already have seen more than other shepherds, and he was proud of that. Suddenly he heard a thundering sound, and he was thrown to the ground by the wind, such as he had never known. The area was swirling in dust so intense that it hid the moon from his view. Before him was an enormous white horse rearing over him with a frightening scream. When the blinding dust had settled a bit, the boy trembled at what he saw. Astride the animal was a horseman, dressed completely in black. With a falcon perched on his left shoulder, he wore a turban, and his entire face, except for his eyes, were covered with black kerchief. He appeared to be a messenger from the desert, but his presence was much more powerful than that of a mere messenger. The strange horseman drew an enormous curved sword from a scabbard mounted on his saddle. The steel of its blade glittered in the light of the moon. Who dares to read the meaning of the flight of the hawks? He demanded so loudly that his words seemed to echo through the 50,000 palm trees of Al Fayoum. It is I who dare to do so, said the boy. He was reminded of the image of Santiago Matamoros, mounted on his white horse with the infidels beneath his hooves. This man looked exactly the same, except that now the roles were reversed. It is I who dare to do so, he repeated, and he lowered his head to receive a blow from the sword. Many lives will be saved because I was able to see to the soul of the world. The sword didn't fall. Instead, the stranger lowered it slowly until the point touched the boy's forehead. It drew a drop of blood. The horseman was completely immobile, as was the boy. It didn't even occur to the boy to flee. In his heart, he felt a strange sense of joy. He was about to die in pursuit of his personal legend, and for Fatima, the omens had been true after all. Here he was, face to face with his enemy. But there was no need to be concerned about dying. The soul of the world awaited him, and he would soon be part of it. And tomorrow, his enemies will also be a part of that soul. The stranger continued to hold the sword at the boy's forehead. Why did you read the flight of the birds? I read only what the birds wanted to tell me. They wanted to save the oasis. Tomorrow, all of you will die. Because there are more men at the oasis. Because there are more men at the oasis than you have. The sword remained where it was. Who are you to change what Allah has willed? Allah created the armies. He also created the hawks. Allah taught me the language of the birds. Everything has been written by the same hand, the boy said, remembering the camel driver's words. The stranger withdrew the sword from the boy's forehead, and the boy felt immensely relieved. But he still couldn't flee. Be careful with your procrastinations. Prognostications, said the stranger. When something is written, there is no way to change it. All I saw was an army, said the boy. I didn't see the outcome of a battle. The stranger seemed satisfied with the answer, but he kept his sword in his hand. What is a stranger doing in a strange land? I am following my personal legend. It's not something you would understand. The stranger placed his sword in his scabbard, and the boy relaxed. I had to test your courage, the stranger said. Courage is the quality most essential to understanding the language of the world. The boy was surprised. The stranger was speaking of things that very few people knew about. You must not let up even after coming so far, he continued. You must love the desert, but never trust it completely, because the desert tests all men. It challenges every step and kills those who become distracted. What he said reminded the boy of the old king. If the warriors come here and your head is still on your shoulders at sunset, come and find me, said the stranger. The same hand that had banished the sword now held a whip. The horse reared again, raising a cloud of dust. Where do you live? Shouted the boy as the horsemen rode away. The hand with the whip pointed to the south. The boy had met the alchemist. Wow. I like going over that again. I loved it last week. I was like, I'm going to read it again. I hope you guys are getting something out of it by me reading it again. Sometimes I just get inspired to go off script, and this is one of those times. Let me see if I can get Melissa on. I told her I was going to go over this again. I'm going to take a quick break because what I did was I put my coffee together, but now I'm going to, I'm boiling the water, but now I'm going to put it together and then come back and we'll have some discussions and wait for Melissa. And the squirrel, good morning, Tracey Brown in chat. Good morning. Did you change your name? Sweet Caramel, Purple Heart. What is the reading? It's called The Alchemist, sweetie, and we are on page 116 right now. Happy rising, Tracy and the Mystical Misfits. Happy rising. Good health to everyone. Have an amazing day, Mystical Misfits. I love all the mystical signs. They're so beautiful. Good morning, Miss Net. Good morning. And good health to everyone that's listening. I love that. Okay. Let me go put my coffee together, and I will be right back after this commercial break.
Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live.
Alrighty now. Did you guys hear the music? I wasn't sure if it was coming on. I'm going to get Melissa on. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, good health and happy rising, Dory. How are you?
I am doing fine, Melissa. How are you?
I feel like I woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I feel like I woke up to the dog to the bush at 6:30 in the morning. I went back to sleep, and me and the dog was sleeping until 9 o'clock. And I said, we never do that. And it is cold up here. It's been raining hard this morning.
Oh.
But it stopped at 9, and I want to go take the dog outside. But when I took him out 6:30 in the morning, it's like he's like, oh no, I'm not going outside in that. So I had to literally pick him up and take him to the tree. Pick him back up and bring him back inside.
That is too funny. Poor baby. That is too funny.
Yep. Yeah. It is. He was like, he doesn't do that. You know what he does? If he sees a storm, he ain't going out in it.
Right.
He'd rather watch you go out in it.
Right.
Or he will watch you.
Right.
But he ain't going out in it.
Right.
It's so funny.
How's your week been?
It's been exhausting a little bit.
Why? What happened?
Because we had somebody from the cleaning company come and help, but I don't know. It's like the cleaning company is supposed to be some type of act, right? Where a cleaning company it's an app where they have different jobs for people to take.
Okay.
And it's crazy because when people that come, they got no experience.
Oh.
They just care about the thing. They get paid the same day that they take the job.
Oh, they get paid the same day? That's pretty hot.
Yeah.
But that's all they care about.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't know. I think sometimes it's not good. Because you don't know what you're gonna end up with. And so far, it's like ended up with people that don't have no experience.
Right.
And they got no compassion.
Oh, I'm sorry, Melissa. In that type of environment.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm like, really? So the clean guy called down for 2 days now, and I was just wondering why he finished so fast in people's room. I looked and someone had mold in their shower. Another person had dust all around their room, and I was like, no wonder why Oki's been cranky lately. Because it's dirty.
Now, was the cleaning company there all week?
No. And because there was a guy that took the jobs to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't show up.
Got it.
But yeah, I mean, he's been doing it for 3 weeks coming, but now it's like he don't show up. He doesn't like to do anything extra, and I'm just like, why take a job if you're not going to do anything? Not saying that you need to do anything extra, but if it's called housekeeping, that means you got to clean start to finish.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I was a little annoyed on that, but I was like, you know what? There's nothing much I can do about that. And
right.
Yeah. And what else happened this week? Well, you know, they had with the hurricane and everything. My aunt lives in Florida. So
what part of Florida?
Went and my mom called her.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what part of Florida she's from.
But she didn't get hit.
I gotta see. I think it's called Coconut Creek or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Fort Lauderdale.
Okay. Did she get hit?
She said it passed them.
So blessed.
She said it passed them, that she was okay.
Mm.
And so on Friday, I don't remember what day she called, because I don't know if it was Wednesday. My mom called her to see if she was okay on Thursday.
Yeah.
I don't know what day that it hit.
Yeah.
But on that same day, I found a dime, because I told my grandma, I said, listen, because I've seen a dime before, but I vacuumed it up, unfortunately, and I said, Grandma, please, just send me another one. Don't you send me another dime.
Yes.
A week later.
Yeah. Yeah, that's because...
So, if she was here, then she would have been in Florida.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah. Because that's where she lives, and, you know, I would definitely tell people, if you can, if you can afford it, just go to a hotel. Or if a family can hook you up, just go do that, because it's better if you can't move anywhere, or go to a hotel that needs to be further up from where you at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the thing is with this storm, though, it surprised them at the last minute. You know what I mean? They were expecting Tampa to be hit. They were expecting Fort Lauderdale to be hit. And it just surprised them at the last minute. And so...
You just don't know what Mother Nature got up her sleeve.
You don't. You don't. You're absolutely right. You don't. Like, she's a funny girl.
You know what? It reminds me right now, she's almost like she could be the magician card.
Okay, I like that analogy, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because she'll show you her right hand, but she won't show you her left hand.
Ah, good point. Right. Good point, Melissa.
Right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's like, that's how, like, she'll say to the news people, this is how this is going to go. Like, they go by science, right?
Yes.
But she's not going by science. She's going maybe on feeling.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they really make you feel. Just like when the animals go and they run because they know something's going to happen. They go by feeling.
Yes. So true. So true. Right.
Yeah. Right. I don't know. I just feel like she could do that. Like, she could show you A, but she's not going to show you B.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that's what probably the news people probably don't say. Well, the weather people probably can't say I see B. Because they go by whatever, technology tells them what the weather's going to be.
Right, right. Right. No, I totally agree with you. Like this weather vane that she, I don't know. It was just unpredictable. I mean, the thing about the models, though, is that, you know, when I kept watching the news, there was what they call the European model, and then there was the American model. And the European model did have it more accurate. It did. I noticed that when it hit the area, then they stopped talking about the European model. The European model said it was going inland. And the American model had it stuck at Tampa. Go ahead.
Well, actually, you know what? I love the fact that you went on a different, you went to a different channel to watch what was going on.
Yeah.
Or a different country to listen to.
Yeah. Well, because the European model, right, they're closer to Africa. So they're the first to see it. Right? And they're the first to, like, understand it.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah. And so all week long, because remember, this was a slow moving monster, right? All week long, it kept saying the European model is saying this, but we are saying that. European model is saying this, but we are predicting this. The European model was right.
Right.
Now, I don't know what the European models are using, but America needs to catch up because they were way off.
Right. Listen, they gotta be kind and be like, listen, come on, give me a little bit.
Yes, help me out here.
I won't conquer. They probably feel like it's gonna be a conquering thing.
It could be.
Like,
Everybody's.
Give me a little bit. I take the whole thing.
Everybody's always in competition, even weather forecasters on who's going to be right, and you very well could be right about that. But when it comes to people's lives, right?
Right.
Like, let's do a better job. Although
that is true.
I don't want to blame these guys, right? Because I was watching them all week and they're so passionate about their job, right? Like, that's what I do love about the weathermen. They are passionate about their job. And some of them go out in the middle of the storm. And they're weather people. They're meteorologists.
And they're weather people.
And
yeah,
they're
I
like
that too.
They're like, we're here in the middle of Ian. And I'm like, get out. Don't do that. So, Melissa.
I love that.
Don't you love that? I know. So, Melissa, I just went over what we went over last week, right? I was just so fascinated.
Right.
And I'm telling you, just going over it again, this boy has really grown up. This boy, I can't be but so proud of him. Remember in the beginning, he was like all arrogant and stuff. And then now you look up and he's willing to die for his word, right? He said, this is the vision that I got from the Hawks and I'm sticking to it. And then the guy goes, well, how dare you predict, something? He goes, I didn't predict. I never saw the outcome. I only saw that something was coming, but I never saw the outcome. Doesn't that happen?
That's like having that little feeling, right?
Yes, that little feeling. Good point, yes. But also, Melissa, doesn't that happen to you and me? Right? When we go to do a reading and Spirit doesn't give us the outcome, they only tell us the scenario. Right? Like, I could tell someone there's a guy coming, right? and I could tell them you're really, really gonna like him, right? And I could tell the qualities of the man. And sometimes when I begin to describe the qualities of the man, the client will go, why would I like that? And I was like, I can't explain that. I can only tell you that when he shows up, you're really going to like him. But I'm giving you a backstory to understand that if he comes up, maybe he comes up as faux, as false. Maybe he's telling you a story that you want to hear. I can only tell you that the cards are telling me you're really going to like him. But there's an undercurrent to him. There's an undercurrent to him. And I can't predict what you're going to do from that point, because you will discover the undercurrent. But I'm not going to say whether or not he's the one, because I can't predict that, because that'll be your choice. Or is he the one, Tracy? I can't predict that for you. I can tell you he's going to come along and you're really, really going to like him. I can then tell you that there's something in his backstory that's not going to suit you, right?
Right. It comes out later.
It comes out later, but you get to choose the outcome, not me.
Right.
And we get that a lot.
It goes by free will too.
Yes.
It still goes by like free will.
Right. But a lot of times the clients want us to just find the one. And that's not what life is about. Life is a journey. In order to find the one, you got to get on the road. And you might have to date, like my mama used to say, you got to date a lot of lemons. The difference is...
I love that.
Oh, yeah. My mama used to say that.
I never heard of that.
What? You got to date a lot of lemons. The difference is, Melissa, don't fall in love with the first lemon that comes along. You don't know if it's a lemon. You're ready to fall in love at sight.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But if a lemon shows up and it's not meshing with you, this lemon is not meshing with you, keep it moving. Moving on. Go find your next lemon until the right guy shows up.
It's like not, how could I say? It's like not buying the first dress in the winter.
Mm-hmm. Or shoes, right?
Or shoes, right?
Right?
Right. I really like that too.
I like your dress, right?
That whole lemon thing got me. That got me today.
My mama used to say that.
But you know what, too? It's about getting to, it's like if you pick the first guy that you meet and say, okay, you're going to like him. But like you said, there always could be a backstory that might be something that might be totally not your thing. But you fell in love with something that you didn't get to know.
Exactly.
Because I always say, and a man shows themselves 3 months later. They put on a front, and then they start the real thumb. And then it's like...
That's a good point, Melissa.
What the hell I wasted all this time?
Well, thank God it's only 3 months. If you could wake up to what you see, it's only 3 months. But also in the beginning of the reading, I told everyone, stop looking and measuring the future. If you get 3 good months out of a situation, enjoy the 3 months. Good for you. Enjoy it. Stop being all sad because somebody showed their true colors and now you're like, oh, God didn't give me what I want. He did give you what you want. He did.
Right.
Appreciate the 3 months. That's the gift. And maybe the gift is to learn
Right.
something out of the 3 months. Learn something. But most women, I don't know about men because I'm not sitting in a man's skin. I can only tell you what men tell me. But most women are so devastated when, let's say it's 3 months. When the 3 months is up, they're devastated. And it goes back to a time, a reason, and whatever. Just appreciate the fact that somebody came along and it was fun for a while.
Right. And you're right. You do learn lessons from being in a relationship, even if it lasts for a month or 2 or 3. There's always a lesson learned from that situation.
Yep.
For both people.
Yes, for both people.
But
yes.
if you recognize what you learn from it, then the next person that comes around could be that lemon that is that is going to be yours.
Mm-hmm.
That golden lemon. That's you.
Or that lemon, you can now make lemonade. That's the guy you're looking for.
Oh, yeah, I like that.
Right?
I like that.
Right? Yes, you're looking for the sugar in the man. Yes.
Right.
But stop making it into a thing that's obviously not a thing. I'm sorry, guys. I can only speak as a woman. A man will show you his true colors, and it won't take forever.
Right.
The point is, when they show you your true colors, stop fantasizing and stop trying to recapture what you saw in the beginning. It's gone. The bubble's busted. It's Hurricane Ian. Your house is gone. Moving on.
That's the truth.
Harsh words, but time to move on. Time to let go. Someone
like
that's not serving your purpose.
It's a tower moment.
Yes.
Right. It's like the tower card.
It's like the tower card. Exactly. Exactly. Rebuild. Over. I'm sorry you had this experience, but you don't stay stuck in this experience trying to figure out how to bring the original man back to you. He lied to you.
Right.
Yeah. Whew, that's deep, Melissa.
Yeah. But you know what? It might be someone out there that needs to hear that today.
That's right.
So they got confirmation.
That's right, Melissa. Mm-hmm. All right, sweetie. Do you want to read?
Oh, yeah.
This is going to be so good. We're on page 116.
Okay, so which you said, say it again to me.
Page 116.
Okay. And I'm reading from the top.
Next morning.
Oh, okay. I'll start there.
Thank you, sweetie.
Next morning, there were 2 scattered throughout the palm trees at
Al-Fayoum.
Before the sun had reached its high point, 500 tribesmen appeared on the horizon. The mounted troops entered the oasis from the north. It appeared to be a peaceful expedition. But they all carried arms hidden in their robes.
Damn.
When they reached the white tent at the center of Al-Fayoum, they withdrew their, I don't know how to say this.
I don't know either. Scimitars.
I don't know how to pronounce it either.
scimitars, and rifles,
Uh-huh.
and they attacked an empty tent.
Oh, wow.
The men of the Oasis surrounded the horsemen from the desert, and within a half an hour, all but one of the intruders were dead. The children had been kept at the other side of a grove of palm trees. And saw nothing of what had happened. The women had remained in their tents, praying for the safekeeping of their husbands, and saw nothing of the battle, either where it's not for the bodies, they're on the ground. It would have appeared to be a normal day at the Oasis. The only tribesmen spared was the commandators.
No, commander.
Commander of the
Battalion.
battle line.
Battalion.
The cat.
The commander of the battalion.
Oh, commander of the battalion. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The afternoon, he was brought before the tribal chieftain, who asked him why he had violated the tradition. The commander. The commander said that his men had been starving and thirsty, exhausted of many days of battle, and had decided to take the Oasis so as to be able to return to the war. The tribal chieftain said that he felt sorry for the tribesmen, but that the tradition was sacred. He condemned the commander to death without honor, rather than being killed by a blade or a bullet. He was hanged from a dead palm tree, where his body twisted in the desert wind. The tribal chieftain called for the boy and presented him with 50 pieces of gold. He repeated his story about Joseph of Egypt and asked the boy to become the counselor of the Oasis.
Hold on, Melissa. Hold on. Look how amazing. Look what happened. Look what happened to this boy. He starts out with Melchizedek, who teaches him about omens. Right? He takes time out for a couple of years to hang out with the crystal shop owner, right? And from the crystal shop owner, he learned that fear stopped the old man from taking a pilgrimage that he always wanted to take all his life, right? So along the way, he keeps learning, and I think that's the beautiful part. The way this kid keeps learning, and then he decides to take the pilgrimage. And think about it, at just the right time, he takes his pilgrimage. He's learned about the soul of the world, the language of the world. And Melissa, you do the language of the world very well, right? You know, you talk to birds, butterflies show up. You know, you said to your grandmother, I know you gave me a dime. I don't know where it's at. Please send me another one. And bingo, bango, grandma's like, get that girl a dime. Right?
Right.
And so it's just so beautiful to have this experience, right? The language of the world, and to start processing what is the world telling you, just you, and to even challenge the language, challenge the system, right? If you say you see me,
Right.
right? If you say you see me, grandma, I need another dime. And the angels and the guides are like, this is easy. We got this. We just gonna give her, she gonna walk down this path of a dime, right? And lo and
Right.
behold, you begin to believe more and more in the language of the world. And that what becomes the most beautiful part about growing up is understanding the language of the world. Most of us don't stop to look at the language of the world, to process it. But the world talks to us constantly. I always tell this story where my sister, who's like 50 at this point, oh no, she might have been, we're 7 years different, so she might have been in her 60s. And she had come down to help me take care of my special needs sister, Tony. And at one point, there were times when we would be walking together. And very casually, I would go, oh my God, isn't that a pretty butterfly? Oh my God, Terry, look at that butterfly. And by the end of the week, because she stayed for 3 weeks, by the end of the week, she said, I have never seen a butterfly until I got here. And I was like, really? And it's just so how,
Wow.
yeah, how vastly different, your eyes can be, the language of the world. Not to say that one is better than the other, right? It's just to say that there's a
Right.
different concentration in living, in life, right? And my thought was,
Right.
well, I'm glad God she got to see the butterflies. I'm glad she had this experience, right? And sometimes you have to
Right.
get someplace else to be with somebody else to let the language of the world show up to her. Now, she has a totally different gift. You give her a set of numbers, those numbers will come out. Totally,
Wow.
totally different gift. Her and my dad, they both, but my dad had the language of the world and numbers.
I love that.
Because my dad, when he went to the army, he has B positive blood. I think it was B positive. And back in the day, you couldn't go into battle unless you had someone with your blood. And when it was time to get on a bus, yeah, when it was time to get on a bus, they pulled him off. And it was like, Brown, get off, come back in a few days. When he came back, he was sent to Panama because they couldn't find someone battle with his blood. And so
Wow.
when he went to Panama, everybody spoke Spanish. It's the story that he told me. He's like, Tracy, everybody, not Tracy, he was talking to everybody. He's like, they spoke Spanish. He said, but that didn't matter. Whenever I had to exchange money, they would count uno, dos, tres, cuatro. He said, I would count 10, 20, 30, 40, 1, 2, 3, 4. He said, I would count it in English, even though they were counting in Spanish.
Wow. Isn't that cool that your dad was there
I
in
know.
Panama and
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like Guy and me and then my grandma being born there.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
I have such a connection to you. Yeah, I have such a connection to you guys. It's so crazy. It's the language of the world. Like, I think if we were to sit down and yeah, I think if we were to sit down in group and write things down we all are 2 degrees away from one another. Nothing is an accident, I've learned. So when I heard you're from Panama, Sky's from Panama, Sky is beautiful conundrum, everyone. I'm like, that doesn't surprise me. I didn't even mention it to you guys. I'm like, that doesn't surprise me. I have a connection to Panama via my dad. He spent his whole journey in Panama. His whole journey.
He got his whole energy there.
His whole journey, his whole service was in Panama. When he came out via Panama. He didn't go to another stint someplace else. His whole time was spent. He spent 4 years in Panama. I mean, it's fascinating.
Well, you got in your roots too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I also have Latinx in my roots, so it doesn't surprise me. I have brown Latinx in my root, right? Because my granddad is Puerto Rican by way of brown skin, right? So it doesn't surprise, but I guess all of us coming together will make sense later on, right? I don't feel like we still know what the purpose is. We're just kind of canoodling together in a group meet every Wednesday. We'll figure it out someday. The one thing I've realized, Melissa, is that, especially being in this group, right? Creating this group, right? The one thing I realize is that the people that are supposed to be there are supposed to be there. And the ones that came and left, they weren't a part of the language of the world. But I didn't understand it for what it was. I was more hurt when people kept leaving. But I realized, as I matured, I realized, let them leave. They're supposed to leave. They're not a part of us. And the growth and the spiritual growth, as I'm watching this little boy grow. This boy was willing to die because he felt that was a faith of his. Because they felt like you went against Allah and told the end of the story. He goes, no, I said I got a vision of men coming to kill. I didn't see the ending. And all I did was say the vision. And then the boy goes, what God gives you, God gives me. Wow. Same God. Same God. The rules and laws and tradition, God gave you that, but God gave me a vision through these birds. Same God. So if I have to die because of something Allah gave me, then you do what you have to do. Because I stand with Allah. Right?
And you know what? Just look how he's getting, how the chiefman wants to give him the gold. Right? He been wanting treasure, right?
Right.
And he don't even need to go to the pyramid to get it.
Right. Right. Remember? Say that again, Melissa. That's very important. What was he in search of?
He was in search of treasure.
Yes.
That's why he wanted to go to the pyramid.
Yes. And what did he wind up getting?
He wound up getting gold.
A pot of gold.
He wound
He wound
up getting treasure.
up getting treasure. But let's look at why real quick. Let's look at why. Because here we had a snot-nosed little kid when he first met Makizovit, right? And he was like, oh, this old man is talking to me. Get away, old man. And the old man was like laughing at him because he's like, oh my God, he's so cute, right? He's so cute. Like it reminds me of my grandson Ezra when he's like, I just want to be grown, Dory. I just want to be grown. And I'm like, that is so cute. Stay 5. Stay 5, crazy. And slowly but surely, you watch the growth of this young man in the book to the point where not only did he understand the language of the world and try to explain it to the salesman, but the salesman didn't get it, right? And then he understands the soul of the world, and that sometimes the soul of the world, sometimes your soul has to die to participate in the soul of the world for others, right? Like he kept growing in his understanding of nature and love and the desert and human beings and himself, to the point by the time he got this vision, he was the only one that God could give the vision to. He was the only one learning in a way where he wasn't following someone else's tradition. So somebody else may have gotten a vision, right? But they wouldn't have spoke up about it because tradition would tell them, no, it never happens this way, Tracy. I get that in reading sometimes. I'm like, oh, let's talk about the monarchy, right? That's a good one. Where I was like, I don't see Williams staying married to the Queen, right? William staying married to the Princess Kate. And then I stated, I was like, I think William might want to be prime minister. I don't think he wants to be king. And then it was like, that's not tradition. Tradition is this. And I was like, no, nothing's going to be tradition anymore. It's changed. It's changing, right? I mean, maybe that's too advanced of, not advanced, too far into seeing something, right? Maybe it's too far, but the way I see it, and I was reading something today, the way I see it, King Charles is going to be so hated that William is going to fall under the hatred of his father. And for him to take over from his father's regime, it's going to get messy because he has to clean up his father's mess. But they're not liking him right now either. I was reading something and they're hating William right now. So this whole thing is a mess.
So they don't like father or son.
No, Melissa, no.
Oh,
This is a mess. They don't like father nor son. If William speaks, they attack him. What do you mean? You know, you want to protect online bullying. You didn't protect Harry and his children. It's really bad right now. And the queen's body isn't even dust yet. She only left us 2 Mondays ago. The funeral was what, 2 Mondays ago? Like, come on.
Right.
So
you know what?
go ahead.
I can't believe it. I can see them. I can see right now they want to throw tomatoes at him.
I could see that happening too, Melissa. Seriously. And my point to you is, moving forward, it's going to come down to William questioning whether or not king is a title that he wants. He may find a way to step away from the monarchy and instead lead as a prime minister.
Right.
And I'm telling you.
You want a counsel. You don't want to be.
Right.
You don't want to be like that. I think from seeing his grandma like that. It's
Right.
like, I don't want to be like you.
Yep. Yep. And there's a lot for Charles to handle. And I think William is going to see, man, this is fucked up. I'm not going to handle it from a king, because you're going to see at some point the king cannot be respected. The position of the king will not be respected. That when the grandmother died, she took the crown with her.
She really did.
Yep. Yep.
You know, it's like that London Bridge song. I don't remember the words, but
London Bridge is falling down,
like,
falling down,
yeah.
falling down. And Melissa, no form.
And Spiritual Girl, she took that.
And
she took her crown with her.
Yes, and no form of magic will bring the crown back to life. No form of magic will work. No form of magic will work. Go ahead.
I think all that magic she was doing, it's like, wow, you on the other side, but no one else is going to be doing that anymore.
And here's the thing.
Like, it's like the magic got broken.
Yes. And here's the thing. I truly believe it's the COVID era that broke the magic, because leaders from all over the world are having a hard grasp on their people.
Because people woke up now.
Yep.
It's like it was like they were unconscious for so long.
Yes.
And now it's broken.
Yes.
That they're all starting to really.
Yes. Yes. I mean, China, India, some African countries, Britain, America, like, it's just crazy. I honestly believe that COVID, where we all went indoors, how was that possible, Melissa? How did God make that happen? I mean, think about it. If you just sit in that, well, for some people, it was longer than 3 months.
Yeah.
Right? For some people, it was up to a year.
It was a ghost town outside.
It was a ghost town.
Yeah.
Yeah. And God took the whole world, and told everybody to get indoors. How's that? I don't even understand how God did that. And when we emerged,
it was like he was cleaning the street.
Yep. And when we emerged,
oh, you know what?
Say that again, Melissa.
I keep thinking about like God sweeping the street.
Yes.
It's like sweeping all that energy away.
Yes. And hold on. When we emerged, people didn't realize we came out as different people. We weren't the same.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yep.
A lot of change came.
A lot of change. A lot. And this change is still happening. The change is still happening. So imagine, like, going back to this boy being able to grow up in this change.
Right.
I mean, I think it's beautiful, yet scary.
I think so too, and I'm kind of glad that the king always felt like, oh, this boy's not gonna remember my name, but everything that he teached him, you know, it's like he grew from it.
Yes.
He grew. Yeah.
So let me just real quick, because this boy, what is this boy's name? Now I'm thinking about it. Does this boy have a name?
I don't know the boy's name neither.
What the hell is this boy's name? Oh, I got it. And it be,
You know what?
I got it, Melissa. It says
You got it.
the boy's name was Santiago. All this time, they never call out his name ever again. Listen to this, Melissa. This is the story of Joseph in the Old Testament, which is similar to this boy's vision, right? Joseph was one of 12 sons. His father loved him more than any of the others. And his father gave him a colored cloak. His brothers were jealous of him and sold him into slavery. He was taken to Egypt and eventually became steward to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials. Potiphar's wife tried unsuccessfully to seduce him, and after false accusations were leveled at Joseph, he was imprisoned. Due to his ability to interpret Pharaoh's dreams, he was made governor of Egypt. He wisely rationed the country's produce in preparation for a time of famine. During the famine, Jacob's son came to Egypt to plead with Joseph for supplies. They did not recognize him, but after he was satisfied that they were reformed and identified himself with great joy, Joseph invited his father and brothers to come and settle in Egypt. The story is recounted in Genesis. That doesn't help. Genesis 37. Let me see if I can. That doesn't help. I thought it was going to tell me the whole story. I was trying to find an easier way for the story. Genesis 39, 37 through 49. Let me see if I can get this. Joseph's dream. Jacob lived in a land where his father had stayed, the land of Canaan. This is an account of Jacob's family line. Joseph, a young man of 17, was tending flocks with his brothers. Now Israel loved Joseph more than any of his other sons because he had been born to him in his old age, and he made him an elaborate robe for him. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any other, they hated Joseph and would not speak a kind word to him. Joseph had a dream, and when he told it to his brothers, they hated him all the more. He said to them, "Listen to this dream I had. We were binding sheaves of grain out in the field when suddenly my sheaf rose and stood upright, while your sheaves gathered around mine and bowed down to it." His brother said to him, "Do you intend to reign over us? Will you actually rule us?" And they hated him all the more because of his dream and what he said. Then he had another dream, and he told it to his brothers. "Listen," he said, "I had another dream, and this time the sun and the moon and 11 stars were bowing down to me." Oh, this boy's getting himself more and more trouble with these brothers. When he told his now the sun and the moon is bowing down and 11 stars. What the heck? When he told his father, as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brothers actually come and bow down to the ground before you?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in his mind. Now his brothers had gone to graze their father's flock. And Israel said to Joseph, "As you know, your brothers are grazing the flocks. Come, I am going to send you to them." "Very well," he replied. So he said to them, "Go and see if all is well with your brothers and the flocks, and bring word back to me. When Joseph arrived, a man found him wandering in the fields and asked him, "What are you looking for?" He replied, "I'm looking for my brothers. Can you tell me where they are grazing their flocks?" "They had moved on from here," the man answered. "I heard them say, 'Let's go over there.'" So Joseph went after his brothers and found them. But they saw him in a distance, and before he reached them, they plotted to kill him. Let me tell you something, Melissa. The Bible is full of murderers, thieves, sexual escapades. This is all in Genesis, right? We don't even get to come out of Genesis, right? Okay. Genesis, if y'all want to know why y'all got problems inside your families, why another woman would take your man, why this, that, and the third, just read Genesis. Genesis explains everything that's happening today. They have the original everything. The original cheater, the original Cain and Abel, the original murderer, the original victim. You know, you think what happened in Eden happened? No. Noah already went through the flood, right? This is crazy. So they threatened to kill him. "Here comes that dreamer," they said to one another. "Come now, let's kill him and throw him into one of these cisterns and say that a ferocious animal devoured him. Then we'll see what comes of his dreams." When one of the brothers, Reuben, heard this, he tried to rescue him from their hands. "Let's not take his life. Don't shed any blood, but throw him in a cistern here in the wilderness. But don't lay a hand on him," Reuben said, "to rescue from them and take him back to his father." So when Joseph came to his brothers, they stripped him of his robe, the beautiful ornate robe he was wearing, and they took him and threw him in a cistern. The cistern was empty. There was no water in it. As they sat down to eat their meal, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Galilee. Their camels were loaded with spices and balm and myrrh, and they were on their way to take them to Egypt. Judah said to one of his brothers, "What will we gain if we kill our brother and cover up his blood? Let's sell him to the Ishmaelites and not lay hands on him. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood." His brothers agreed. So when they went to the merchants, his brothers pulled Joseph out of the system and sold him to the Ishmaelites, who then took him to Egypt. Now, I'm telling this story, Melissa, because this brother's going through it. Much like you and I and the listeners have to go through it, right? Jealousy. Should we kill him? Should we not kill him? Right? You and I go through things, right? I have my own family issues, right? And in the midst of all of these family issues, you're going to ask yourself, why me, God, right? You are. Why did this have to happen to me? And you're not going to know it till you get to the other side. So here, this poor boy, Joseph, his brothers fucking hate him because of some goddamn robe his father gave him, right? And then he doesn't make it any better because he's like, "Guys, I've been having this dream and everybody's going to bow down to me." Like, shut up, Joseph, right? When Reuben returned to the system, he saw Joseph was not there. He tore his clothes. He went back to his brothers and said, "The boy isn't there. Where can I turn now?" They got Joseph's robe, slaughtered a goat, and dipped the robe in blood. They took the ornate back to their father and said, hold on. So now he's in Egypt, right? With the Israelites. And when Reuben returned to Sistan, He tore his clothes, went back to the brothers and said, the boy isn't there. Where can I turn? Then they got Joseph's robe, slaughtered the goat, dipped it in the robe in blood, then took the ornate robe back to the father and said, we found this. Examine it to see whether it's your son's robe. He recognized it and saw it's my son's robe. Some ferocious animal had devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on a sackcloth, and mourned for his son for many days. All his sons and daughters came to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted. No, he said, I will continue to mourn until I join my son in the grave. So his father wept for him. Meanwhile, Joseph was in Egypt, was taken to Egypt and to Potiphar, one of Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard. At that time, Judah left his brothers and went down to stay with the man. Then Judah met the daughter of a Canaanite woman. He married her and made love to her. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son named She conceived again and gave birth to a son named Orion. She gave birth still to another son named Shelah. It was at that she gave birth. Judah got a wife for his firstborn. Then Judah said to Onan, sleep with your brother's wife and fulfill your duty to her as brother-in-law to raise up offsprings for your brother. For Onan knew that the child would not be his. So whenever he slept with his brother's wife, he spilled his semen on the ground to keep from providing the offspring providing offspring for his brother. You see, there's even incest in here. Like the brother is telling.
Right.
I mean, y'all better read the Bible. There's some shit in the Bible. Everybody wants to talk about the Bible. Just read Genesis. That's all you have to do is read Genesis. It's full of stuff. Sexual stuff. Murder. I'm forcing you to sleep with my wife. What the fuck? All right. All right, this is very long. When Judah saw he thought she was a prostitute, she had covered her face, not realized she was the daughter-in-law. He went up to her by the road and that would give to hold on. I'm trying to get to the part about the dream, but it's losing it. Now Joseph was taken down to Egypt. Potiphar, an Egyptian who was one of the Pharaoh's officials, the captain of the guard, brought him from the Ishmaelites who had taken him to Egypt. The Lord was with Joseph so that he prospered, and he lived in the house of the Egyptian master. When his master saw that the Lord was with him and that the Lord gave him success in everything he did, Joseph found favor in his eyes and became his attendant. Potiphar put him in charge of his household, and he entrusted to his care everything he owned. From the time he put him in charge of his household and all that he owned, the Lord blessed the household of the Egyptian because of Joseph. The blessing of the Lord was on everything Potiphar had, both in the house
90 seconds.
And in the field. So Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything except the food he ate. Now Joseph was well built and handsome, and after a while, his master's wife took notice of Joseph and said, "Come to bed with me." But he refused. "With me in charge," he told her, "my master does not concern himself with anything in the house.
60 seconds.
Everything he owns, he has entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. My master has withheld nothing from me except you, because you are his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God?" And although she spoke to Joseph day after day, he refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. One day he went into the house to attend his duties, and none of the household servants was inside. She caught him by his cloak and said, "Come to bed with me." But he left his cloak in her hand and ran out the house.
10 seconds.
When she saw that he had left his cloak in her hand and ran out the house, she called her house servants. "Look," she said to him, "this Hebrew had been brought to us to make sport of us. He came in here to sleep with me, but I screamed. And when he heard me scream for help, he left his cloak beside me and ran out the house." See, again, that's like Emmett Till. That's like Emmett Till, right? Like the claim of somebody trying to rape somebody has always been a thing, right?
Right.
Anything you find, I promise you guys, you will find in Genesis, right? When his master heard the story, his wife told him, saying, "This is how your slave treated me." He burned with anger. Joseph's master took him and put him in prison, the place where the king's prisoners were confined. But while Joseph was there in prison, the Lord was with him. The Lord showed him kindness and granted him favor in the eyes of the prison ward. So the warden put Joseph in charge. Again, Joseph is in charge again of something, of all those held in prison. And he was made responsible for all that was done there. The warden paid no attention to anything under Joseph's care because the Lord was with Joseph and gave him success in whatever he did. All right. Hold on a second.
Wow.
Oh, this is crazy. This is absolutely crazy. I'm trying to get to the part of the dream, but we may not have enough time to get there. So I'm ending at, let me see, 39. Let me see if I can get to 40. Sometime later, the cupbearer and the baker, the king of Egypt, offended their master, the king of Egypt. Pharaoh was angry with two officials, the chief cupbearer and the chief baker, and put them in custody in the house of the captain of the guard in the same prison where Joseph was confined. The captain of the guard was assigned to Joseph, and he attended them. After they had been in custody for some time, each of the two men, the cupbearer and the baker, and the king of Egypt, who were being held in prison, had a dream that night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. When Joseph came to them the next morning, he said that they were dejected. So he asked Pharaoh's official who were in custody with him in his master's house, "Why do you look so sad today?" He goes, "We both had dreams," they answered, "but there is no one to interpret them." Then Joseph said to them, Do not interpretations belong to God? Tell me your dreams." So the cupbearer told Joseph his dream, and he said to him, "In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me, and one of the vines had 3 branches. Oh, wait. And as soon as it budded, it blocked. Okay. Melissa, let me just see something. Hold on. Let me just make sure I'm doing something right here. Okay, good. I do have time. Okay. In my dream, I saw a vine in front of me. One of the vines were 3 branches. As soon as it budded, it blossomed, and its clusters ripened into grapes. Pharaoh's cup was in my hand, and I took the grapes and squeezed them in Pharaoh's cup and put the cup in his hand. This is what it means, Joseph said. The 3 branches are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift up your head and restore you to your position, and you will put Pharaoh's cup in the cupbearer. But when all goes well with you, remember me and show me kindness. Mention me to Pharaoh and get me out of prison. I was forcefully carried off from the land, and even here I have done nothing to deserve being put in a dungeon. Okay, Block Talk Radio, ended Melissa. When the chief baker saw that Joseph had given a favorable interpretation, he said to Joseph, I too have a dream. On my head were 3 baskets of bread. In the top basket were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out of the basket on my head. This is what it means, Joseph said. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh. Now the third day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the heads of the chief cupbearer and the chief baker in the presence of the officials. He restored the chief cupbearer to his position, so that once again put the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the chief baker, just as Joseph had said to him in the interpretation. Hi, Melissa. I think you might have missed the second dream. So the baker also had a dream. And he goes, I had a dream too. On my head was 3 baskets of bread. In the top of the baskets were all kinds of baked goods for Pharaoh, but the birds were eating them out the basket on my head. Joseph said, this is what it means. The 3 baskets are 3 days. Within 3 days, Pharaoh will lift off your head and impale your body on a pole, and the birds will eat away your flesh. Now on the third day was Pharaoh's birthday, and he gave a feast for all his officials. He lifted up the head of the cupbearer and the baker in the presence of his officials. He restored the cupbearer to his position, so that he once again put the cup in Pharaoh's hand. But he impaled the baker, just as Joseph had said to him in his interpretation. The chief cupbearer, however, did not remember Joseph. He forgot him. Remember, Joseph said, come back and get me. When 2 full years had passed, Pharaoh had a dream. He was standing by the Nile when out of the river there came up 7 cows, sleek and fat, and they grazed upon the reeds. After them, 7 other cows, ugly and gaunt, came out of the Nile and stood beside those on the riverbank. And the cows that were ugly and gaunt ate up 7 sleek, fat cows. And Pharaoh woke up. He fell asleep again, and at a second dream, 7 heads of grains, healthy and good, were growing on a single stalk. And after them, 7 other heads of grains sprouted, thin and scorched by the east wind. The thin heads of the grain swallowed up the 7 healthy. Then Pharaoh woke up. It had been a dream. In the morning, his mind was troubled, and he sent for all the magicians and the wise men of Egypt. Pharaoh told him his dreams, but no one could interpret them. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, today I am reminded of my shortcomings. Pharaoh was once angry with his servant, and he imprisoned me and the baker in the house of the captain of the guard. Each of us had a dream the same night, and each dream had a meaning of its own. Now a young Hebrew is there with us, and a servant of the captain of the guard. And we told him our dreams, and he interpreted them for us, giving each man the interpretation of his dream. And things turned out exactly as he interpreted them to us. I was restored to my position, and the other man was impaled. So Pharaoh sent for Joseph, and he said he was quickly brought from the dungeon. When he had shaved and changed his clothes, he came to Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Joseph, I had a dream no one can interpret, but I have heard it said of you that you have a dream you can interpret. I have heard it is said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret. I cannot do it, Joseph replied to the Pharaoh, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. Guys, I wish you guys could watch. There is a cat listening to everything. When I tell you the shit that goes on around me, there is a cat. Let me see if I can get his picture. Damn it. Listening to everything that I'm saying. And I mean everything. When I tell you this is no joke, this is no joke. I can't get a picture of him. Damn it. There it is. It's very grainy, but I'll put it in the group. It's very, oh shit, it's very grainy. God damn it. All right. These animals, I know you're listening, Theodore. I know you're listening. You can't fool me anymore, Theodore. But stay right there and continue listening if that's your desire. But y'all ain't fooling me anymore, you animals. I cannot interpret, but God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, in my dream, I was standing on the river Nile, when out of the river came up 7 cows, fat and sleek, and they grazed upon the reed. And then 7 other cows came up, scrawny, very ugly and lean. I've never seen such ugly cows in all the land of Egypt. The lean, ugly cows ate up the 7 fat cows that came up first. But even after they ate them, no one could tell them that they had done so. They looked just as ugly as before. Then I woke up. In my dream, I saw 7 heads of grain, full and good, growing on a single stalk. After them, 7 other heads sprouted, withered and thin and scorched. The thin heads of grain swallowed up the 7 good heads. I told this to the magicians, but none of them could explain it to me. Then Joseph said to the Pharaoh, the dreams of the Pharaoh are one and the same. God has revealed to the Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 cows are 7 years. The 7 good heads of grain are 7 years. It is one and the same. The 7 lean cows that came up after 7 years, and so are the 7 worthless heads of grain scorched by the wind. They are both 7 years of famine. It is just that I said to Pharaoh, God has shown Pharaoh what he is about to do. God is showing Pharaoh. 7 years of great abundance are coming throughout the land of Egypt. But 7 years of famine will follow. Then all the abundance in Egypt will be forgotten, and famine will rage the land. The abundance in the land will never be remembered, because the famine that follows it will be so severe. The reason the dream was given to Pharaoh in 2 forms is that the matter has been firmly decided by God, and God will do it soon. And now the Pharaoh looked for a discerning wise man and put him in charge of the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh appoint commissioners over the land to take a fifth of the harvest of Egypt during the 7 years of abundance. They shall collect all the food in all these good years that are coming and store up the grain under the authority of Pharaoh to be kept in the cities for food. This food shall be held in reserve for the country to be used during the 7 years of famine that will come upon Egypt, so that the country may not be ruined by famine. The plan seemed good to Pharaoh and all his officials. So Pharaoh asked them, "Can we find anyone like this, one in whom is the Spirit of God?" Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you." So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his finger and put it on Joseph's finger. He dressed him in robes of fine linen and put a gold chain around his neck. He had him ride in a chariot as his second in command, and people shouted before him, "Make way!" Thus he put him in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Now, what's happening here, right? Let's talk about this real quick. The robe that his father gave him was the beginning of what the father, even though he didn't know it, saw, right? Now, Joseph is adorned with an ornate robe again. And remember the dream, all shall bow down to me? It's happening. He is second underneath the king. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, "I am Pharaoh, but without your word, no one will lift hand or foot in Egypt." Pharaoh gave Joseph the name Saphanath-Paneah and gave him Asnath, daughter of Pathia, priest of On, to be his wife. And Joseph went throughout the land of Egypt. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of the Pharaoh king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from Pharaoh's presence and traveled throughout Egypt. During the 7 years of abundance, the land produced plentiful. Joseph collected all the food produced in the 7 years of abundance in Egypt and stored in its cities. Each city he put the food grain in a field surrounding it. Joseph stored up huge quantities of grain, like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping record because it was beyond measure. Remember, God is with Joseph. So remember,
Likes abundance, right? When Mary's mother Jesus said, there's no more
wine in abundance. When Jesus had the multiple of people and they were running out of food and they were like, "Jesus, there's no food." Jesus produced fish in abundance, right? So God loves abundance, and you guys have to trust that God wants abundance for you too. Bad times will always come, but abundance is what God wants for you too. Hold on. Joseph collected all the food in each city. Joseph stored up the huge quantities of grain like the sand of the sea. It was so much that he stopped keeping record because it was beyond measure. Before the years of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. Joseph named his first, "And it is because God had made me forget all my trouble and my father's household." The second son he named, "It is because God has made me fruitful in the land of my suffering." Do you guys understand that? God will make you fruitful. I can't believe I'm preaching like a pastor right now. It's not my game, but it's important. God will make you fruitful in the land, in the heart, in the temple, in the life of your suffering. 7 years of abundance in Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began. But just as Joseph said, there was famine in all the other lands. But in the whole land of Egypt, there was food. When all of Egypt began to feel the famine, the people cried to Pharaoh for food. Then Pharaoh told all the Egyptians, go to Joseph and do what he tells you. When the famine had spread over the whole country, Joseph opened up all the storehouses and sold grain to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe throughout Egypt. And all the world came to Egypt to buy grain from Joseph because the famine was severe everywhere. When Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt, he said to his son, this is Joseph's father, Jacob, he said to his sons, why do you just keep looking at each other? I have heard that there is grain in Egypt. Go down there and buy some for us so that we may live and not die. Then 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain from Egypt. But Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with the others because he was afraid that harm might come to him. So Israel's sons were among those who went to the grain. But there was famine in the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was the governor of the land. Remember, Joseph is the governor of the land, the person who sold grain to all of its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, what did they do, guys? They bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. Where do you come from? He asked. From the land of Canaan, they replied, to buy food. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Then he remembered his dreams about them and said to them, you are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected. No, no, my lord, they answered. Your servants have come to buy food. We are the sons of one man. Your servants are honest men. We are not spies. No, he said to them, you have come to see where our land is unprotected. But they replied, your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest is now with our father, and one is no more. Joseph said to them, It is just as I told you. You are spies, and this is how you will be tested. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place until your youngest brother comes here. Send one of your number to get your brother. The rest will be kept in prison. Oh, wow, Joseph is mean. The rest of you will be kept in prison so that your words may be tested to see if you're telling the truth. If you are not, then as surely as Pharaoh lives, you are all spies, and he will put them all in custody for 3 days. Oh my God, this goes on forever. Should I stop reading, guys? I can always finish this next week. This goes on forever. I didn't know the story of Joseph was this tantalizing. I'm going to save the rest of this for next week. It goes on forever, and I don't know where it ends. So I'm stopping at, let me see. I'm stopping at Genesis 42. Genesis 42. Um, 18. Genesis 42:18. Let me put that in the thing. Genesis. How do you spell Genesis? Genesis 42:18. Okay? I put it in the feed. If you want to read it from that point on, go ahead and read it from that point on. The reason why I went back to tell you guys about Joseph is because it goes back to the Alchemist, right? It also reminds me to tell everyone that in the Bible there is such things as prophecies, interpretation of dreams, psychics, seers. So not near no one better tell me some religious shit about this, that, and the third, about psychics and seers and dream interpretations. It's in the Bible. And dream interpretations was given to Joseph and saved Egypt. So not near a religious person better ever come up in my face and tell me nothing about what kind of work I'm doing that is not with God. God gifted me as God gifts you. But leave me and my relationship with God alone. I know what I'm doing. I do it well. I cheat no one. I hold back no information. And I make people's lives better. How you make your decisions after the reading, that's your relationship with God. But my relationship with you is my relationship with God that's then passed over to you, like Joseph's interpretations in his dreams, which goes back to the alchemist and having a very similar dream and having a reference point where the chieftains had to remember how a dream interpretation saved Egypt. And sure enough, this little boy, Santiago, saved the oasis. See the connections always? All right, guys. Whew, child. That got deep in the end, as it always does. You let God in, and whoo, child, God will talk to you. I love it. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for sticking around. Whoever is on, thank you. I really appreciate you. Call me for your own personal reading. Please like the video. Thank you for sticking by me. If you're listening, immediately like. You will always get something out of my channel. Also, just as a reminder to everyone, I am switching over to Rumble. Download the app Rumble. All right? I'm going to do it mid-October. All right? Download the app Rumble. Let's get ready to rumble. Download the app Rumble. Because I need to have more freedom of speech when I'm talking. And there's too much censoring going on with YouTube, and I can't take it anymore. All right, guys. I love you all. Thank you for putting up with me. Download the app Rumble. We're leaving at Genesis 42:18. I love you. Goodbye.
Gals and guys, go to Tracey.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you.
Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Gals and guys, go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live. Go to Tracey Brown Live.